This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Colectivo Coffee. Handmade coffee since 1993. Check them out online at colectivo.com.
This is Joe Wong. Welcome to The Trap Set, where each week we explore the lives of drummers. I want to play something for you.
Boom, 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 boom,
You're hearing Wazy by Madam Gandhi, the artistic moniker for today's guest, Kiran Gandhi. At a relatively young age, Kiran has already built an impressive, multifaceted career. She's performed live with artists such as MIA and Thievery Corporation, while also exploring a parallel interest in music business, first as an analyst for Interscope Records, and more recently as an MBA student at Harvard Business School. Kiran also made international headlines earlier this year for her decision to bleed freely while running the London Marathon during her period. It will be exciting to see how Kiran's interests in music, business, and activism intersect as she continues to evolve as an artist. And now our talk with Kiran Gandhi.
My mom was a buyer for Macy's and was working a lot in philanthropy. She was working very closely with both Hillary Clinton and Eleanor Roosevelt's foundations to advance women's leadership. And my father was a banker on Wall Street.
All right. Were you a happy kid?
Extremely happy.
Because your dad was making the big bucks?
Oh my God. I don't know about all
kidding.
that. More that I was in New York City, to be honest. I was going to an all-girls school. I felt very loved and supported in my school growing up. I did a lot of activities, and I think the coolest part about being in New York as a musician is that you can play in bars at 15. They just put X's on your hands. So really, for me, I had this very specific reason to go out and play and explore New York instead of just, I don't know, being at home.
When did you discover drumming?
I was at a summer camp in Maine. I was 11. I knew that
I was 11 when I got into drumming too.
It's a sweet spot.
It's a good age.
It's a good age. You're free and you're not thinking about anything but the drums. I was at a summer camp in Maine, and I knew in the afternoon that we'd have to swim. Every day you have to swim in the lake. And I didn't like swimming. I had an irrational fear of sharks, even though I knew they didn't exist in a lake. And so I sort of snuck off on one of the afternoons, and I went to the theater cabin where I knew no people would be. And the owner of the camp's rusty drum set was there, and I started playing it.
So you discovered drums at 11. When did you get serious about it?
I got serious about it when I was...
Let me back it up. Do you feel like you connected with the instrument right away when you were playing in the drama cabin, the theater cabin?
Instantly. As soon as I started playing, I felt very comfortable. And a maintenance man actually came up to me, and I thought he was going to send me back. And instead, it turned out he knew how to play the drums. And so he showed me a beat in that moment, and I just spent the next 2-3 hours learning it and got it. So then it became completely addictive.
So then what was your next step?
Going back to New York, telling my parents and telling my school that this is my new passion, playing drums at school, and then my parents got me a drum set for Christmas, and I continued taking lessons in New York all throughout middle and high school.
Were there lots of kids into drugs at your school?
I would say it was one degree of separation. In my immediate circle, I never saw that stuff, but I know that different grades did experience using various drugs, either as a means of getting skinny. I think that was the main thing for young girls in New York City at that echelon, or just trying to feel cool and party.
Yeah, it's a signifier, like if you're coking it up.
Actually, music protected me from that stuff, to be honest, which is ironic because you think sometimes music brings you closer to drugs and partying, but I think it's more about a cool factor when you're in high school. Are you cool? And my coolness was derived from being able to play music and play music that other people loved instead of partying and getting drunk. So I felt protected by music in a way.
What were your aspirations? Did you want to become a professional musician? Did you know what you wanted to do with your life?
No, I never thought that I would have the drums or take the drums as seriously as I did later on. And I'm so happy that that's what happened.
Well, what did you want to do?
I really thought I would be involved with politics. I was doing internships for Hillary Clinton when she was the senator of New York. My parents would have speakers.
Do you have pictures with you and Hillary?
Yeah.
Are you supporting her?
Absolutely. I'm working for her campaign right now.
All right. So, sorry, I cut you off. So you were interning for her And
so my dream was probably to go to Georgetown, be in D.C., do different internships with either the mayor or work on Capitol Hill. I thought I was going to go on a very distinctly political route.
So you went to Georgetown, and how did you meet the Thievery Corporation folks?
Right around the time I turned 21, I started hanging out in D.C., and I had been listening to Thievery growing up, all in New York City, just in my headphones. And when I found out that they were D.C.-based and they owned a club there, a legendary club called 18th Street Lounge, I was just drawn to it. 3 nights a week I'd be at this club because they have multiple floors. It's an old diplomat building, and I would just watch the live bands. And going more and more religiously, I used to stare at the conga player, and the conga player, Javier, would say, "Do you want to play or something?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I want to play." So then they let me keep sitting in over and over again, come backstage during the shows when they'd be touring in D.C., and in my senior year, I got my own gig playing drums alongside the DJ every single Sunday, and I did that for a year straight. It was incredible. That's when I really started to take myself seriously as a drummer. That really changed for me, where I stopped saying, I play the drums, and I started saying, I'm a drummer.
So then how did touring with Thievery come about?
I came just as a visitor to their show at Bonnaroo in Tennessee. And I remember there were a couple songs where the percussionist is actually singing the songs, and I was backstage just watching the show. In the middle of the show, Eric Hilton, he's one of the 2 DJs of Thievery Corporation, he looks me right in the eye, and I catch him in that moment. And he says, "Get on the drums." And this is literally during the live show. So I run off from backstage, I get on the drums, I find some sticks near the percussion setup, and I play.
I feel like that sounds like a fantasy that people have whenever they go to concerts.
You're so right.
You know what I mean? Like anytime I go to see a band that I love, I'm
you
like,
want them.
Maybe the drummer is going to need to take a break and they'll ask me to come up.
Awesome.
So that actually happened to you.
That happened. And actually, just hearing you say that, it makes me want to write it down, that like whenever I have a live show, I want to make sure maybe I can bring up drummers in the audience and say, hey, come have your moment. Like, let's share this moment together. I want to do that for them. But yes, that happened. And then I was invited to play a couple of other shows after that. Virgin Mobile Fest in Maryland. Yeah.
Okay. And then did you actually tour with them for a while?
It was always a sitting in capacity because there's moments where the percussionist comes off the drums and sings.
After Georgetown, you wound up here in Los Angeles.
Yes, sir.
And you were working for Interscope.
Yes.
At that point, you obviously had made the decision to pursue music or something in the music industry instead of politics, right?
Yes.
Not that the two are mutually exclusive, but you were focusing on something in music.
Here's how I see it. The thing that drew me to politics is the desire to make the world a better place, to influence young people, especially young women. And then the more I watched Thievery and hung out with Thievery and realized how music has impacted me far more than listening to any political speech, I realized that the lever that I wanted to pull to make this impact shifted. Instead of wanting to make speeches at the White House or run for office, I thought, what if I used my lyrics and the words and the music that I write to have the same impact? This is what made me feel very confident to switch into the music industry and jump into it right after graduation.
So you went to Interscope. Was
I
that your
did.
first job?
It was.
And what was your job title?
My job title was digital analyst, and I got the job actually because of my math background.
Right.
They created the position for me. It was the first time they've ever had anyone officially looking at patterns in Spotify and YouTube music consumption.
So what are some insights that you have gleaned from all of these observations? Like, how are you going to proceed with your music career?
Oh, yeah. That part is awesome.
On the business side.
That part is super cool. I think about my experience at Interscope and also all the studying that I did after that about the music industry and how it will inform my strategy. One thing is little hacks on Spotify to get your music heard. Understanding the...
So you're pro Spotify?
Oh, absolutely.
What do you think about all the artists that have come out and said, my song's been played 100 million times and I've only made $2,000 off of it?
Yep, I think a lot about that. That school of thought is based on an artist who has already made a lot of money off of their recorded music in an industry that was once dependent and viable around the sale of recorded music.
Right.
Then the value of recorded music went to zero. So Spotify in relation to zero is a lot better. But in my opinion, anyone who's 13 years old, 14 years old, 15 years old coming up right now, they never have had the experience of making money off recorded music, so they are not thinking in that way.
Right.
Instead, we're in an attention economy. Because digital enables ubiquity, which is for far more people to hear the song at any given time, over and over again, for the numbers to be recorded, for you to know exactly where those people are, the value instead is to make content and music that people love, get lots of people following you and interested in the work you're doing, and monetizing that large amount of people far later in your career. But it takes you have to be more patient. You have to keep putting out top music. And I actually think for better or for worse, it makes the industry more competitive because you do have to attract people to listen to you in volume.
After working at Interscope, and I remember when you found out and you got your letter, you went to Harvard Business School for an MBA.
Yes.
What was the focus of your study at Harvard?
The first year is a blanket program where everyone takes identically the same 11 classes. That was just a straight business degree. You see all sorts of different industries.
Okay.
In my second year, though, I absolutely chose and handpicked classes that were focused on media, entertainment, pop culture, communications, and it was just incredible.
Were your parents really proud of you when you went there?
I'm sure they were. My mom, she always just wants us to be happy. So she doesn't care about these sorts of textbook milestones. She always just asks are you happy? Are you happy? Are you fine? Okay.
And what about your dad?
My dad...
Does he care more about that stuff?
My dad was mad that I was touring while trying to get my MBA. So I didn't tell him until much later that I actually did that. Because I almost got kicked out. Yeah.
Because you almost got kicked out.
Well, in the sense that I was touring. So I was missing class every now and then. And I was really good about not missing class, to be honest. I'll tell you a crazy story after this. But I got bottom 10% of the class for 4 of my 5 classes. And had I gotten the 5th one, I would have gotten kicked out. But I was safe.
What was the 5th one? I guess there were how many classes?
11.
11, yeah, okay. All right, tell me how you met Mia.
Maya had come in for a meeting at Interscope with the digital marketing team. And I saw that on my boss's calendar. And right as she walked by my desk, my boss, I said, Brooke, can I come to the meeting? And Brooke was like, you can come, don't say anything. And I was like, yes. So I went to the meeting, I met Maya there, and we just had a vibe. It felt really good to meet her, and she was super cool with me. Then I told them that I had made a video of me drumming at my desk to Bad Girls, and they were like, yeah, send us that. So we had just kind of sent back and forth that email. But really what happened was I knew that her album was coming out, which means that her tour was going to happen. And I told her product manager inside, I was like, MIA should have a drummer. And, maybe a brown, funky Indian girl who knows how to play all the stuff. And so then I was just being cheeky. I didn't really think anything would come out of it.
Are you sure?
I didn't think
you were putting
anything.
it out there into the universe, though.
I put it out into the universe. I did. And it's because I did actually know how to play all this stuff. And I did genuinely think that she needed a drummer because the stage that I saw her play at right on the Thievery show I was at, it was huge, and I just didn't understand why she didn't have
drummer
live.
On that?
She didn't. It was just a DJ and her.
How did you actually get the call?
We sent Maya a video through the product manager at Interscope who said, okay, I'll take you seriously. And then Maya emailed me back directly and said, listen, this video is dope. We're not thinking about the tour yet, but I'll hit you up when we do. Thank you for sending me this. Then I got into Harvard. I didn't hear anything for like 5 months from them. And then boom, just like that, the summer before I was starting school, I got an email. Let's go. Here are the dates. Can you do it? And I was like, yes. We toured Japan, Canada, the US. We did a whole practice for a week in Montreal. I started school, and then it was a whole nother slew of dates. So that's why I was touring while in school.
And what was the story you were going to tell me?
Well, the most intense week I had of my life at school was a midterms week. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of that week, I had shows in New York with Maya because it was her album release. So I would go to school in the morning, 6 a.m., to like 2 p.m. Then I'd get on a flight and I'd go to New York and I'd go right to the venue, play the show, crash at the hotel, and then 4 a.m. go to the airport, fly back to Boston, 6 a.m., do class. And I did that for 4 days back to back in a row and didn't miss a class. Even got the cold call on one day, which means you have to open up the whole class, 20-minute talk by yourself. And I had a midterm on that Friday, and I remember being backstage with Maya studying for the midterm, and the midterm went fine. So
what
it was
did
a
she
strong
think
week.
about the fact that you were going to Harvard at the time? Did she think it was cool?
No, she didn't think it was cool at all. She was like, Harvard is the helm of capitalism. It's the reason why everything's all fucked up.
But isn't she married to like a billionaire finance person?
She's divorced from a billionaire finance person.
So that's why she hated it.
No, I think it's related also to her politics. She's very focused on what she calls third world democracy. She's focused on righteousness for the third world. She's very, very interested in advancing poverty and alleviating poverty, both in Sri Lanka and India. It was inspiring, and I felt grateful that she actually engaged with me. We did a show in Argentina. We had breakfast together, and we went back and forth on why she doesn't like Harvard. I can tell you one cool thing she taught me.
How did that, if at all, change your opinion of Harvard?
It kept me in check. It said, Kiran, go in there, learn all the good, learn how to feel confident, learn how to think intelligently, learn how to think analytically, learn how to have empathy. But don't leave that place wanting to be like,
a hedge fund manager?
rich or like obsessed with money or obsessed with being better than other people or wanting to be the 1% or like going after something that is constructed as opposed to something that is of pure intentions. Mm-hmm. That helped me. She said there's triangles, circles, and squares. Circles are those of the earth, people who believe in reincarnation. Then squares are people who are knowledge seekers. They're new, they're fresh, they're starting their journey. And then triangles are those who are corrupt. They are trying to stand on the backs of other people. In order for them to advance, they see that they have to put somebody else down. And she said, you all go into Harvard as squares, but then you leave as triangles. And I'll never forget that.
That is pretty intense.
It was very intense. It was in the morning of a show.
You're not playing with her anymore?
No, I did my last show with her 2014, last year.
How do you reconcile your artistic side with the business school side?
Business school actually made me a better artist. I never was singing. I never was at the mic. I was always at the drum set. But when I came out of business school, I had this different confidence in myself and a greater desire to share my ideas and not be afraid to share my ideas. And that's actually made me a better artist because I take more risks. I believe in them instead of being afraid that it's not good or it's not professional or whatever. So interestingly, business school made me a better artist. I think in terms of reconciling, it's difficult. But what I try to do is make sure constantly that one is enhancing the other.
Let's talk about the London Marathon. It became a big news story because you ran the marathon, you had your period, you decided not to wear a tampon or a napkin, and your pants were all bloody, and it turned into a giant news story. What were your intentions? And now that we're a few months onward, what have you accomplished by doing that?
Focusing on feminism and women's equality has always been deeply important to me. And when I was at business school, even though I was a voice of feminism, I wasn't able to play it out as actively as I wanted to. When I got to the marathon, I had this choice. I was in a lot of pain from my period that day. I was super upset that I had it. Had I worn a tampon or a pad, I really felt like I would have been super uncomfortable on the marathon course. People chafe very badly when they run for 5 miles. I didn't have good information as to what the best solution was for me. And finally, there's no privacy on a marathon course, so had I needed to change out any of that stuff, I wouldn't have been able to do that comfortably. And in analyzing the fact that the third option, which is bleeding freely, which actually seemed like the best option to me, would offend other people, that made me want to do it even more. I was like, that is actually oppression. If women can't make choices about their own bodies that are unto themselves and have to consider like whether they're going to gross somebody out or make somebody else uncomfortable, I just didn't think that was right. So I ran for that reason. The more I ran, though, the more I started to think, this is actually an issue that we don't talk about, that in women in India and in developing nations, we tell them, clean it up, hide it, don't tell anyone that you have it, etc., etc. But we don't make it affordable or easy for them to do that. It's very difficult. It's very expensive. It's very unhygienic. So I did it to raise awareness. I wrote about it, and I shared it.
What are the options for women in developing nations? Like if they don't have access to tampons, what do they do?
Some women use rags and wash the cloths, but even the blood on the rags, they're too afraid to hang it up on the clothing rack outside. So it's sort of like hangs secretly away in the house. Like everyone has these little hacks and these little secret ways of doing things, but there's no information for each other. Mothers don't pass proper information to their daughters in the way that it should be because it's normal. This is the problem with stigma.
Do you think that people should have the choice to bleed freely in everyday situations?
No, obviously not. This is not about telling people to bleed freely. Anyone who misinterpreted the action, then there's a little bit of ignorance around that.
Right.
My message is not advocating for free bleeding.
Okay.
My message is using shock culture and extremities in a protected environment like a marathon by a protected person, me in a privileged setting, to send a message that women need to be able to have the language and the confidence to talk comfortably about their own body so that everything is not rooted in fear, discomfort, and lack of education.
And I think there was a lot of misinterpretation of what the message you were trying to get across
And
was.
I have no problem with that because
Right.
anytime you do something of meaning, you need people to not understand it so that there's fruit for discourse. If everyone got it, the story would have died. It was trending on Facebook for 4 days in a row because there was so much dialogue around it. People asking, explaining, learning, confused, angry, happy. It was perfect. It was like this absurd thing that people were like so fucked up by, but that's what made it work.
Right, right. What kind of platforms or opportunities did that provide for you?
I have been speaking about feminism and gender equality since I was 4 years old. This act...
You've been speaking about gender equality since you were 4?
Yes.
What were some of the first issues that you were speaking about at that age?
My 2 best friends, who are both boys, told me, hey, let's be the Power Rangers for Halloween. I said, awesome, let's go. I showed up the next day as the Red Ranger, who's a dude, but I related to him far more than I related to the Pink Ranger. Those 2 boys were very, very angry with me. And from that day, I knew, okay, gender ascriptions, gender assignment is very, very specific in this country, and that if you don't go by the rules, it makes people very angry.
It's specific in lots of countries, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about my sphere of influence,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Especially if America's supposed to be the leader.
Right. So, okay, but I cut you off.
All I was saying was that I had been speaking about feminism and gender equality in my own circles, and it's something I'm deeply passionate about because it comes naturally to me and I understand it, and I'm not afraid to speak about it because it's awkward for many people. So this act gave me the chance to speak about a lot of things that matter to me on a larger platform, and I felt very grateful for that. You rarely get a megaphone. If you get it, I use it to put other people on, to direct people's attentions to lots of organizations that are doing incredible work, and for me to share the ideas that I think are meaningful for young women to hear.
Why do you think that people think of a period as disgusting or gross?
I know exactly why. It's because we love women's bodies as sexual objects. We love to fuck them. We love to watch pornography. We love to see tits. We love to see things that are beautiful.
Speak for yourself here.
We love
No,
to
I'm
see
just
things
kidding.
that are beautiful. And so then when pop culture sees something ugly or sees something discomforting or sees something that's not of relating to fucking, then they just want to shut it out, close it up, and not talk about it. It's an old sort of school sentiment from the 50s when women are told, be ladylike, smell good, look skinny, look beautiful, clean yourself up, use a douche spray, all this stuff. It's so that women are constantly ready for public consumption, and periods are not along those lines. So we're told clean it up.
You know what I found interesting when I was reading lots of the reactions to the marathon were that lots of women were really hostile towards you.
Absolutely.
You know, like lots of women were like, yeah, I believe in women's rights, but that's just disgusting.
Totally. It's
so
perfect.
what's your response to that?
Yeah, there was two main schools of thought. That was the first one, and the second was, oh, that's really unhygienic. And both were really, really helpful. That's what made for fruit for the discussion. My job is not to tell other women how to be or what their comfort level is. My job was to start a conversation so that women can benchmark themselves along the comfort. Shock culture is most effective in making people unpack their own assumptions and their own fears. And that's what this act was about. So it's good that someone was able to take a moment to write, I think that's disgusting. I'd like to think that made them think in a moment, why do I think this is disgusting?
Right.
When I get lost, I just turn on Wazy. She always knows which way to take me. Basking naked where the sun rays hit me.
What's next for you?
Right now, I'm actually working on my album. It's under Madam Gandhi. The notion of a madam is sort of like Madam President, Madam Prime Minister. She is using her feminine qualities to be a leader, to move forward in the world, to work on something she cares about. I want everyone to find their inner madam, and that's sort of the theme for the music. Me even finding my own voice, finding new drum patterns that I love. I'm working on this album, and then I use a lot of my time in my day to do activism in New York City, working with the New York City Council to put free tampons and pads in schools. We're working with the MTA right now to approve the word period to be shown in commercials. And we're also talking
Wait a second. The word period can't be shown in commercials?
No, it's a big thing right now. You can Google it.
Who bans it? Is that self-imposed by the industry, or is that like an FCC thing, or what?
No, this is specifically the New York MTA, Metro Transit Association.
Gotcha.
Yes. We wanted to have a commercial in subways for this underwear that allows you to not bleed through your clothing, basically.
Yeah.
It's a great product. It's useful innovation for women, especially women in professional settings who truly, truly cannot have any sort of stains on their body. We had an amazing ad campaign.
Is it like an underwear in addition to wearing a tampon?
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
Yes. And your comfort level talking about this is mind-blowing. You're like an evolved male. I love you, Joe. And
Thank you.
They tried to post that stuff on the subway, and they said, you can't have the word period. It's profane. And they said, what are you talking about? There's like models who are naked on these subways all the time. There's breast augmentation commercials all the time. Why can't we have the word period, which is a natural process?
Right.
So that's something that we're working on right now. And that's what's going on.
Do you ever find it funny that there's like this weird squeamishness around breasts, and people will say like I had a video taken off of Instagram because there was a guy playing drums and a woman dancing around without a shirt. It was from a Bernard Purdie movie, Lila. It was like an exploitation movie from the 70s, but it was like, this is a family platform, and it's like, yeah, breasts are used to feed families.
Yeah.
Like that's like, I don't understand that disconnect.
I understand it. It's the similar sentiment I told you, which is that we as a society have created women's bodies as a thing that is only allowed to exist if we're consuming it sexually. If it looks beautiful, if it's for us to look at, if it's to sell vodka, if it's to know that maybe I'll get laid later. But when it's not in that setting, it is uncomfortable because we're not used to seeing it in a more positive or enlightened setting. That's why it makes people deeply uncomfortable, and people say, take it down.
Have you studied examples of...
successful female leadership?
Yes.
Well, I mean, personally, one of my favorites is Hillary. When she was the first lady, she was the one focusing on how women's rights are humans' rights. I mean, what are you going to say?
Okay, how is her leadership style female in its nature? Because I feel like one of the criticisms that's leveled at her is that, okay, like, you know, she's a strong female, so people accuse her of being almost man-like.
Right. Okay, so that's not what I want.
Yeah.
I don't want women to become men.
Right.
That's the worst thing we can do. Men are amazing at being men. We need women to be amazing at being women. To me, it's about understanding authentically what are your leadership styles and not being insecure about them and owning them. And because we send so much mixed messaging to women to look beautiful, it distracts them from being able to be excellent leaders. I feel that way. I think Gloria Steinem is another good example of strong female leadership. She was leading a movement in the 60s and 70s about women's liberation. And her leadership style was inclusive. It was delegating. It was warm. It was authentic. It was funny. It was goofy. It was not about putting others down in order to elevate herself. In fact, she put as many people up around her, which actually got more people involved in the movement because she allowed all of them to be leaders and shine around her simultaneously. This is one example, I think, that is very female leadership.
Do you have any closing thoughts for us?
And I just want to say thank you so much for having me on the show. I can't wait to see how the conversation shapes out.
Well, thanks for being here. The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.